Thanks for being here tonight. This is the third presentation that I've been to that you've sponsored, and at all three of them, you've talked about how uneasy business is with the future and how uncertain the future is, which prevents them from investing, etc. I think it's even broader than that. I think everybody in this room is uncertain about the future. And I think you are too. We all are worried. You gave a really good presentation on the Republican approach to the budget. It was very comprehensive and very understandable. If we had a senator here from the Democratic side doing a PowerPoint and doing a presentation, probably it would be equally persuasive. But nothing on the two screens would be the same. I don't think the uncertainty rests with a Republican philosophy or a Democratic philosophy and whether it's implemented. The uncertainty is where the compromise is. And my concern is I don't see any compromise on the part of anybody in Congress. Congress right now has the lowest rating in the history of this country. Your Congress and that senator's Congress. Now you both are good Americans, just like we are all good Americans to come and participate in this. But I guess my concern is if you can have a Ronald Reagan and a Tip O'Neill, who are probably two of the most astute politicians in our lifetime, who radically, vehemently disagreed with each other and found compromise. Why can't you find compromise? You, not you personally, but you as Congress find compromise. Because until we find compromise and find a common direction for our country, we are going to be at odds just like we are right here, and just like we would be if there were two screens. We have to find common ground. And common ground comes with compromise. It doesn't come with sticking our heels into the sand and saying no, no, no. So what's your approach to finding compromise for these large issues that we're looking at?
Well, if you look at, and I appreciate your comments, and I would agree with you. If you're not scared in this room, then you're not paying attention. I mean, we do have some very big issues in this country that we need to face. And as you saw, I believe that we need to be able to work across the aisle, and I have a bipartisan group that has continued to work across the aisle. And we're going to continue to do that. So when you ask me what am I doing, I'm actually trying to work with people who believe that we have problems and believe that we have issues. The problem, though, is this, and I tell everybody the three major things that I learned when I went down in Congress. And I've only been there 9 months, and if you think it's bad, I get called to do nothing. Congress, I get called the guy that's only approval rating of 9 or 10%. I've only been there 9 months. I was in an airplane the other day flying. I was with two individuals in the labor union sitting next to me. They were talking about the country. They were talking about the United States. They were talking about all their concerns. They looked over at me and said, "What do you do for a living?" How about that? And I looked at him and I said, "You know what? I've never lied. I don't plan on lying." I said, "I'm a U.S. Congressman." And wow, did that open up the floodgates. But it was a good conversation. Because you know what he said? He spoke to him and said, "I don't like Democrats. I don't like Republicans. I don't like any of them." And I'm sitting there thinking, wow. I'm sitting there thinking, wow. But the problem is, it's because everybody sees us not working together. Well, guess what? 4 years ago, 2 years ago, people were working together. That's where you got the health care bill. That's where you got cap and trade almost through. That's where you got a lot of things you don't want. And that's where we sent 85 new members and 85 new Republicans and 9 new Democrats down because people were not happy with moving forward and compromise. So now what we're doing is we're down there and we're saying we don't agree with this, we don't agree with that. But I will also tell you politics is big of a problem down there as anything. Because if you saw what happened, think about this. And you can check on the internet and find this to be true. We passed the budget act in the end of July. We had bipartisan support of the Budget Control Act. We had 85 Democrats, 100 plus Republicans, whatever the numbers were, I don't have the exact ones. Then we went to and that budget said we're going to cut, we're going to cap, and we're going to pass a balanced budget amendment later this fall. The cuts were a number which would have been simple when the CR came up. So last week, we put a CR out that, guess what, equaled exactly what the levels that we passed in a bipartisan relationship in July. That's exactly what we passed. So you would think the CR would pass, right? Should just flew right through. Now people call the Tea Party the problem. The problem is the 35 that voted against the Budget Control Act also voted against the CR. So they weren't the problem. And you can check that out. They were the same 35. What happened was that 85 Democrats all went no. So they all switched no. And the question would be why? Why did they all go no? I happened to be with one of them that night, and I said to him, why'd you go no? And he said, well, our party told us, our party leaders told us to go no. Because they wanted to make sure that they were able to show the Republicans that they just can't get what they want 100% of the time. So when you start to talk about compromise, it's got to be both sides. And we start to talk about Tea Party, I mean, everybody wants to take the 35 or 40 people who stand on their principles, and I respect them for standing on their principles, but you got to remember there's 35 or 40 on the left that stand on their principles too. And that's really, when you look at this group of 435 men, you know, when our forefathers wrote this, and our founding fathers wrote this Constitution, they wrote of 435 men, at that time it was less than four, were going to get together. They knew there was going to be problems. Because if I try to get us all today to agree on anything in this room, we will be here for weeks, if not months. And there's probably only 100 plus here. Multiply that times 4 and see what happens. But the one thing I have learned in the last 9 months is I respect the position. I don't agree with it. I respect the position on the left. I don't agree with it. I respect the position that those on the far right will vote yes or no no matter what, even if it sinks the whole economy in many cases. Left, right, wherever. But what we have to do is as a group be able to work together. What I've done, I told you, I'm trying to work together. I'm trying to learn. The guys on the right, far right, I go meet with them all the time, trying to understand what they're doing. The guys on the left, I try and meet with them and understand what they're doing too. But we're going to have to work together because this isn't a Democrat problem or a Republican problem. I've said it time and time again. It's an American problem. So back here. Look at that.
How can Congress and the President help to stem the tide of jobs going overseas, particularly when globalization and multinational corporations will simply target the lowest labor costs regardless of our need for good wage jobs right here in this country?
Let me ask you this before I answer that. Do you really believe that it's the wages in the foreign countries that are driving companies to leave?
I think it is.
It's
Okay.
a factor.
Have you ever talked to anybody that has moved a business or has moved internationally to determine why they're leaving?
I've read about them in the papers and heard about it on the news.
Okay, here's what I will tell you, and I'm going to give you my answer. One thing I've learned in the last 9 months, don't believe what you see in the paper and don't believe what you hear on the news. All right? If you did do that, you would have believed a lot of things that weren't true about me when I was running for this seat. All right? So,
But who do you believe in?
well, I think what you have to do, you have to find out for yourself. And one thing I've learned, what you're going to learn from me or hear from me, is that I do go talk to those corporations. I want to know why you're moving. I want to know why those jobs are going overseas. They never have said it's labor. And I know that sounds strange, but they have never told me it's labor. I just met with a company who is going to go overseas, and here's the reason. They said, Jim, I have regulations that have stopped me from using my product and selling my product for 2 years. and I can move my company out of this country and get that product sold and sell it back. So why would I stay here? The other thing that I heard after talking to international corporations is I get an automatic 10% bonus for leaving this country. Now, if you think about it, if your profit margin is 2 or 3%, if your profit margin, which is a normal, reasonable profit margin, and you move out of this country, you go from 35% tax rate to a 24 or 25% tax rate, you save 10% right there. We need to be able to make our companies more competitive right here. We need to be able to make our companies more competitive by eliminating some of these overburdened regulations. If we do that, they will stay here because there is a cost. There is a cost of moving jobs overseas, and there's a cost of getting that product back. And when you talk to these companies, they would rather not do that. They would rather do it right here. So I just ask you in the future, and I appreciate your question, I really do, is to try and dig in and get that information. And even if it means, I mean, whether it's asking me, asking somebody, if you disagree, ask somebody else that can ask for you in Congress, but get the proper answer. And I mean that sincerely. We got to get the answers, because don't trust everything what you're hearing on Fox, CNN, ABC, NBC. I'm going to tell you the biggest, I told you 3 problems I had. One big thing I found when I got back, and I come back every weekend because I don't like DC and I don't think DC likes me. That's okay. I'm going to come back here every weekend and meet with, maybe not everybody that agrees with me, but at least I'm going to represent all of you. And what I've learned is when I watch TV, now I'm part of it, and I sit there and watch these stations, I say, that's not true. I'm there. That's not true. So keep that in mind. But I do appreciate your question. We're going to do one more question. And I've been able to hold up my voice. So
You talked about appropriations. Does the White House have an unlimited budget because they're hiring all these czars? And do you add czars that aren't vetted, and then do you have concerns about them circumventing your authority, Congress?
well, it's a good question. And here's another thing that happens. Remember, there hasn't been a budget passed for 900 days. So what's happening is that the president is spending dollars based on continuing resolutions, which prior to this Congress were just going up and up and up. So this Congress at least brought them down and started bringing them down. And we've been trying to bring them down to 2008 levels. Once we bring them down to a level, let's assume you're a part of the federal government, you get a certain amount of dollars, and you can spend it as long as you spend it within the CR. The appropriation process, so you know, I mean, we spend all kind of time on the appropriation process, but the Senate hasn't taken those up either. So what you're finding is we spent 2 months on appropriation bills. We spent 2 months on coming up with appropriation spending, and then it just sits there. So we need your help. Again, it's important that it's a dollar amount that he's spending inside. One of our bills that we passed that has not passed the Senate was the elimination of some of the czars. So we're continuing to cut. I don't remember the exact number, whether it was 7 or 9 or 10 of them.
He just added 2 more.
I know, but what he does is he takes the appropriations, the dollars under the CR, and spends it.
But aren't they circumventing your authority by the student payment?
No, they're because Congress is setting funding levels and he's spending the dollars underneath it.
But
So,
I mean, these people are making decisions.
well, that's what oversight's all about, and I agree. And as I told you, this is the first Congress in many years that has done oversight. And we need to continue to do oversight so we can see what those czars are doing. If you notice what's going on in the hearings, you don't get a lot of coverage of this, but you're starting to see a lot of back and forth in these committees. Like, what are you doing? Why are you spending that? Why have you given money to the company, out west? What was the purpose? And we're trying to zero down. That hadn't been done. So I hope you can appreciate it. It does take time, but it has been only a 9-month process. That's the one thing. In closing, I really do appreciate you all being here. I learned a lot. I know not everybody in this room is ever going to agree with me 100% of the time. If you did, we'd have some serious problems. I say that all the time. If we can agree 80% of the time, I hope that's good. But I know if we agreed 100% of the time, we'd all be robots and have it not be good. But I will tell you this, I'm going to continue to work as hard as I can to represent you. If you disagree with one of my positions, and I know several of you have and have called me about it, at least contact me and find out why. Because what you're going to find out is I don't willy-nilly take that card We just vote, I get all the details, I get all the specifics, I get all the issues, and I make the best decision based on all the information. If you make the best decision based on what you heard on TV, and again, it's a great question, what you heard on TV, or what you hear on the news, or what you hear on the radio, you're going to be voting all kind of ways that aren't correct. But if you get the right, and the one thing I will tell you about Congress is that I can call anybody and ask them whether it's any of the officials, and they come to my office. So it's not like they run and hide. I mean, they do come, they present their position. That doesn't say I agree with them, but they do present their position. So I get the information. And then my staff and I sit down, I read the bill, we make a specific conclusion based on the bill, and we vote, which I believe is in the best interest for my district. So in closing, keep that in mind. I would tell you that this is one of the, somebody asked me once, do you respect congressmen more now than you did before? And my answer is yes. And here's the reason. Can you imagine, you take a job, you're only there 9 months, and everybody that sees you thinks your value is only 9%. You only have a 9% rating. I mean, if you think about it, you're working down there and doing the best you can, you're away from your family, and you're getting all the information, and then they say, well, you're one of those guys that only has a 9% approval rate. My answer is, I've only been there 9 months. So, if you give me the opportunity, I'll continue to do what I believe is right for you. I appreciate you being here, I really do. I thank you for your input. You're always welcome. You'll know that I go to groups all the time, whether it's groups like this. I've been to the Start Down 12, I've been in the fan group. I am not concerned about going and talking to you and listening, because I believe I do a better job of listening many times, and it helps me along. So again, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Have a great day.